part of that is our natural resource management area. Y'all may have heard it as NORMA. NORMA is in our future land use element. And what this was is back in 1988 when we did our first comprehensive plan under the new rules that were established in 1985, people like me pulled out the best data we had then. Aerials, quad maps, surveys, ground truthing, and identified all of the wetlands, all of the habitat, all of these areas, natural groundwater recharge areas. And we put that on a map of the entire county. And that's how we came up with this natural resource management area. And the reason why is this is an area that needs protection. This is an area which has resources, and so we want to see enhanced standards. So if you are in this area and you are trying to develop your land, you're going to have to give us a 50-foot buffer from the wetlands. Normally it's 25 feet. And we have a hard absolute. We do not average. If you go to the Water Management District, they are requiring an average of 25 feet around the wetlands, whereas Volusia County is requiring a very hard line in regards to 25 feet and 50 feet at normal. It also provides us with an opportunity to help out, and Brad's going to get into it when he gets into the criteria he utilizes and his staff utilizes for forever. The environmental core overlay is also in our future land use element. This is an area that we've worked with, and again, remember I was talking about the intergovernmental coordination element? When the Florida Department of Environmental Protection goes through and they start creating their list of top priorities for Florida Forever, we go in there and we identify the 16 properties that have been identified by DEP, and we make it the ECO. And ECO is a top priority in regards to the quality and importance of those natural resources that are in there. So again, heightened level of protection, and also again, coordinating with our friend Brad in land stewardship, so that way we can work with property owners so that if they are willing, we can buy their property. If they're not willing, we can work with them to make sure that if they're going to utilize their land, they're not going to have a negative impact on our natural resources. I'm going to kind of quickly go through these maps. These were maps that we showed this past July as part of an update on our growth management strategies. And what it is I want to make sure folks understand geographically and scale-wise what we have in Volusia County. So our total area is 808,000 acres. We're 1,100 square miles. There's about 112,000 acres of water. Our cities now account for, that's probably a year old now, so that's probably closer to 220,000 acres by now, or somewhere thereabouts. I don't know yet, but well over 215,000 acres are within the city's boundaries. If you saw what it looked like in 1990 and compared it, it would be basically half. In 1990, there was 113,000 acres, if my memory is serving me correct. So we've doubled the size of the cities in basically 30 years. So now we have an idea of where we're at. We're looking at the county having, we have these things called interlocal service boundary agreements. Pardon me, I'm a planner, I got an acronym, sorry. So there's ISBAs, that's where we basically agree with cities that this part of the county should be within the cities because they have utilities, they have everything else. So we work with them as a joint planning. Then we have these local plans, ones that are really well known in our area is the Samsula local plan, which they say we will remain rural. You cannot change your land use above 1 unit per 5 acres. We don't want utilities, we don't want commercial, we want to be left alone. Similar situation with the Tomoka Farms Village. But another local plan is the Farmington local plan. And that's down in the southeast portion of our county by I-95. It goes into Brevard County. This is a very large tract of land. In Volusia County, it's roughly 45,000 acres, of which roughly 30,000 acres are in permanent conservation for a wetland mitigation bank. They've also provided us mitigation in the Deep Creek area, and then they've deeded over property. We also have the Osteen local plan, which is again another more intensive authorization for development in the area along 415. This gives you an idea where the eco is located, and here's Norma. As you can see, this one area right in here is in both. Those are the areas that are targeted for acquisition if we can. And again, we run a willing seller position. That's where Brad's going to talk about that. When we start talking in, there's roughly 274,000 acres right now in conservation. That's including state of Florida, U.S., Volusia County, and private conservation easements. So what we're seeing is that from one perspective, we've been very successful in getting roughly 275,000, almost a quarter of our area of our county right now is in conservation. And we just had 75% of the voting population say, keep going for the next 20 years. So that indicates that we're going to have seed money so we can start partnering and do more with that. The thing about it is, there we go. A lot of the areas are also within our eco or NORMA overlay. So again, we're going to be utilizing that information, plus information from the state and the feds to help us guide both our land use decisions and what Brad's going to be talking to you about from there. So now I've talked about how we regulate. Brad's going to talk about how we acquire. He's got the fun job. He writes checks. I just go around and tell people no.
I have to tell people no sometimes too. So thank you for having me. As Clay said, Brad Burbaugh, and happy to be here to talk about Volusia Forever. It's one of my favorite things to talk about with the public because we have such a supportive public. And I want to show you, I don't know, one day I was getting my car serviced and thinking about all the referenda that have been passed around Florida in the last couple of years in terms of land conservation. So I have I started doing some research as I was waiting, and I have a slide to share with you I think that you'll find really interesting about what our voters have done. And I always tell people that conservation is in our DNA in Volusia County. And so I'm going to share some slides with you, and this is the first one. So in the last 3 years I would say, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 referenda. Some of these are on multiple iterations. But we certainly had the most voters out of any county vote to continue Volusia Forever. So we had 213, nearly 76%, and you can see the other ones. Collier, I think, has a little bit higher percentage in Indian River, but not nearly as many voters as we've had support Volusia Forever. There were in Nassau County, they coupled it with is that in Nassau? Yeah. Coupled it with, I think that's actually supposed to be in Pasco. I apologize. I didn't realize I got it wrong there. It was Pasco County. They coupled it with the infrastructure surtax. So this is the capital improvements for roadways, but they said 30% would go to land conservation or green infrastructure, and it passed. And then in Alachua, they asked for 10 years to fund wild places and wild spaces, I think was their initiative. And coupled it with some other initiatives, including affordable housing. But by far, we have the most voters supporting our program, and I think that's important for you folks to know, for our council members to know. So when we talk about willing seller or land acquisition programs, there's multiple programs that are available for land acquisition. Number one is Volusia Forever. We have a strong history in Volusia County of leveraging partnerships. So finding people that have money. When you have money, it's much easier to find other people with money. So we've been very successful there in the 2000 iteration of the program. So I call them Volusia Forever 1.0, which was 2000 to 2020. and Volusia Forever 2.0, which is our 2020 to 2040. In the first iteration of the program, we spent about $80 million of your money, and we leveraged that with $40 million of partner money. So we were able to stretch our money. As Melissa said, I came from the university system, extension service, and we're real big on return on investment. So we talk a lot about return on investment. So we've been doing a pretty good job so far in the first iteration of in Volusia Forever 2.0. We've spent $1.87 million of your tax dollars so far, but we've leveraged that with about $2.08 million on partner funds. So I get lots of questions. You have 17 properties on the A list that council has authorized. Why don't we just go out and buy all of them right now? We certainly could do that, but Volusia Forever would be done. We would close up shop. So what we do is we try to take a disciplined approach where we're aligning partners as we go. So that's the reason why we're not buying all 17 at one time. And so I think that's important for you to know. That has worked well for us in the past. The numbers speak for themselves. So until I hear otherwise, that's the track that we're going to stay on. And one of the things that our voters did with Volusia Forever in 2020, and we were the first in the state to do this. I think a lot of the things that we have done, say we, it's really, I stand on the shoulders of a lot of smart people that came before me, but forest and farmlands are an important component in the state. They call them working lands. We want to keep working lands working. They're an important part of preservation. And so we added forest and farmlands to our ballot language. Now, this isn't protecting large farms that have a lot of nitrogen byproduct. So concentrated feeding operations, stuff like that, we're not going to try to preserve, but mostly what we have coming in the door right now is grazing farms, so cattle, pastures. Those are the things that we're looking at and the state is looking at. The state last year allocated $300 million for ag easements as a separate program. I'll talk a little bit about that. So we have Volusia Forever, which we do fee simple acquisitions, which means we buy them and it's public ownership. Conservation easements and agricultural easements. So conservation easements are we reward good stewardship of the land. We keep it in private ownership, we keep it on the tax rolls, but what we're basically doing with that conservation easement is extinguishing the development rights. We are buying those development rights from that individual who owns that property, and they're agreeing to this conservation easement in perpetuity. We try to take a balanced approach with Forever. In the previous iteration of the program, we bought about 25,000 acres, a little over 20, so 22,000 acres. And I think in conservation easements, we bought about 16,000. So we balance kind of both fee simple, because if we buy something fee simple, we're gonna have to fund the operations of it, and also those conservation easements, which is rewarding that private ownership. One of the things that we always try to do to educate people, if you ever watch anything on Forever at the council, if it goes before, is if we're buying something fee simple, we're taking that off the tax rolls. So we want the public to know that if we're buying it, this is gonna be $5,000 less that's coming to the general fund next year. So I think that's important for everyone to know as well, is that we're reducing our tax base when we're buying something fee simple. However, I will say, a lot of these large landowners or people who are in conservation or in ag production have reduced their tax burden significantly because of what they're doing. So a lot of times it's not very much. The Rural and Family Lands Program, so Florida Forever is kind of the top tier program in Florida. That has about $400 million right now. The problem, I will say, and your team, my team, has been in Tallahassee a lot this year meeting with those folks, is the legislature gave them $400 million to spend for land acquisition, but they gave them no money to increase their staff level from when they had 30 million from the legislature and 0 from the legislature. So you have the same amount of staff at DEP trying to get 400 million out the year, at 400 million out the door, than you did that we're getting 30, 20, 10 million from the legislature. So we have been patiently waiting and trying to develop the relationships. I think relationships matter because it really, I heard Adam Putnam say this one time when he was speaking to a group, relationships matter because it determines whether you get the benefit of the doubt or not. And so we've been trying real hard to develop relationships with the folks at DEP, and I'm happy to report one of our big projects that we think have a lot of water quality benefits is now being appraised for purchase with Florida Forever. So happy about that. Rural and Family Lands Program, another 300 million in ARPA funds. So I will say that the 300 million that went to DEP was ARPA funds. 300 million that went to the Department of Ag for ag easements was also ARPA funds. So this was one-time monies.
ARPA.
American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay.
Yes.
Fit. COVID
Yes.
relief.
Yes, COVID relief. And so the Rural and Family Lands Program had not been funded since Charles Bronson was the Commissioner of Ag. So now that Mr. Simpson is, or Commissioner Simpson is in, this 300 million came available to him in January. So they are still standing up their program and have not put out an open call for applications yet, but we have a handful of applications that are ready to go when they open. But they have to, again, this ARPA funds need to be expended by 2026, is it, Clay? So we have a short window. But so we're trying to get as much as we can. There's also a federal program, an ag easement program that we're working one of our big projects through. And Water Management District has been a tremendous partner for us in land acquisition. And then of course municipalities. During the listening sessions after the ballot language was reauthorized, we did listening sessions, one in this room. We did them all over the county. And we heard from folks saying we want some high profile projects in municipalities for forever. And so we've been trying to do that. We've recently done one in Ormond, we've done one in DeLand. We tried to get one done in DeBerry, we just couldn't get it across the finish line. So how do we determine conservation worthiness? So when we're looking at something and saying, okay, well, does this have conservation value? Is it worthy of conservation? Not, it looks pretty. I will say proximity and connectivity is important. If you want the ecological benefits of a parcel, it helps if it's bigger and has connectivity to larger parcels. So we don't want to manage islands, because if we're managing islands, that means our team with their heavy equipment and lowboys are loading up and driving out. Now, if we have something that's 9,000 acres connected, we can keep equipment on the property. So it's kind of an economies of scale thing that makes sense for us. But here are the things that we look at. These are aligned with all of the other funding programs in Florida too. These are conservation values that our land trusts have kind of shaped and molded into our program. So we look at proximity and connectivity, furtherance of acquisition efforts. Will it further and expand something that was bought under a previous program? Is it environmentally sensitive land? Does it provide for resource-based recreation? We don't want to buy something and lock it up. We want to allow the public to enjoy it as well. Preservation of farmland, these two with the asterisks are of course for the Rural and Family Lands Program. Values, restoration and management, can it be restored? Who will manage it? And then conversion to non-agricultural uses. We see a lot of high and dry farmland on municipal service boundaries being converted. So if we know those are a target for development, how are we getting in there and in the game and trying to get those properties as well? So Volusia Forever history, this is a Clay Henderson statistic, and he says it, so I'm gonna say it too as I trust him. But in 1986, our voters approved the first land buying program in the nation. It was a $20 million referendum that our voters approved. And the focus there was really parks. We bought 17 parks in '86 with this money, expanded parks. So we're a good part. This is the slide we showed to DEP to be like, hey, we're cool, man. We're a good partner. Remember us? So Blue Springs, DeLeon, North Penn, Lake George, we bought additions with our money for the state to expand their parks. Lake Monroe Park, some of Central Park in Ormond, Bicentennial. I think we're all bought with those monies. It was about, I think 17,000 acres that was bought. We bought 9,000 acres up at Lake George as well. So Volusia Forever programs, I'm gonna claim the 86 program as well in here. So to date, we've conserved about 55,000 acres. All of the money in, 107 Rs, 54 from partners, and 41,000 is managed by the county. Where did I put the clicker in my pocket? So, one of the things we want to talk about is the wildlife corridor versus Volusia Forever project area. So, the wildlife corridor got a lot of publication, or a lot of PR, I think, in 2021 when it was unanimously passed. I think that's part of the reason that it got a lot of PR is you got everyone in the Florida legislature to agree on something. I don't know if that's ever happened, but we'll take it because it was something that benefited us. And the wildlife corridor did not establish a new program. It's not regulatory. It basically just designated a geographic area as the wildlife corridor. The cool thing about us is that was undergirded by science from the University of Florida, go Gators, called the Ecological Greenway Network. We've been using that science since 2000s. So we had established these Florida Forever project areas in our county using the Ecological Greenway Network, which they now call the Wildlife Corridor. So we've been using the science for over 20 years in our county. So Florida Forever project areas are conservation areas in your county that have been vetted. So we have went to the state and said, DEP, we think this should be a project area. They, along with FWC, Division of Historic Resources, Florida Forest Service, have all vetted the property. They've come in, done a site visit, and they went through two voting cycles at DEP, and became a Florida Forever project area. So, this is the Florida. So this is the Ecological Greenways Network, aka the Wildlife Corridor in yellow, in our county. The black are Florida Forever project areas. So this. What did I do? So this is Spruce Creek right here, the Volusia Conservation Corridor. What's right here in between the Volusia Conservation Corridor? So this is the 27,000 acre Tiger Bay State Forest, 43 square miles in the center of our county. So once that was established, we knew that we needed to establish this corridor, the Palmetto Curtain, or the wild heart of Volusia County, people like to talk about. This is, I think, the real success story that I'll share some stats with you, this Volusia Conservation Corridor. This is the Indian River Lagoon Blueway. So these are all areas that have been vetted by the state and say these are priority areas for acquisition, and we'll partner with you on these. This is the Volusia Conservation Corridor. So it's almost 53,000 acres. It basically runs from south to north in the county because, as I said, remember, this is Tiger Bay, so it's connected. And we've conserved 77% to date. We just bought another 1,300 acres last year to put us over the 40,000 acre mark, so we're real close. People will ask, well, do you do outreach in Forever? Yes, we do targeted outreach to large property owners in this corridor and other project areas. So, yes?
Just so I'm clear, the red outline,
Yes.
is that part of what you already preserved, or this is your whole goal?
So this is, it's already, some of it's, so of this is 53,000 acres, the red outline.
Okay.
Of that 53,000, we've conserved 40,000 of it.
Okay.
So there's about 10,000 acres left. So, for example, we have a 900 acre piece that came in our last cycle that was from our outreach. So we'll really reach out, go knock on large landowners' doors saying, hey, have you ever considered Volusia Forever? Are you a willing seller? The public can also nominate lands as well. This is what's been conserved through acquisition. So fee simple. Clay gave you the 280,000 number. So that was with regulatory conservation. This is with fee simple and some regulatory, I would say, because it has Farmington in it as well. So this is what's been conserved in our county so far. There's a decent amount. What has been the crosshatch is what's been conserved. So if you look at again, EGN, this is the wildlife corridor, 55% in our county has been conserved. So what I did here is just, these are some of the projects currently under consideration that have come in the door for Volusia Forever in our first couple cycles. So what we're doing with this one is trying to do a boundary expansion to include this into the corridor. But it's about 10,000 acres in the corridor, wildlife corridor. You can't really see, but this is the Indian River Lagoon Blueway. This is the Indian River Lagoon right here. This is a big drainage basin, and this is a big 2,500 acre piece that's at the western edge of Florida shores that we're trying hard to get. This is in our Volusia Conservation Corridor again. This is the 1,300 acres that we acquired last year, Palm Bluff Conservation Area. One of the things I would encourage you to do is we have a Volusia Forever and Echo dashboard. I heard you loud and clear in our listening sessions that you wanted more transparency and accountability for the programs. So we've developed these GIS-based accountability dashboards where you can
Get frustrated.
yes. You can toggle up here between each program. So if you selected 1986, all that would light up is everything we bought in 86. If you click on the properties, there's a pop-up that will tell you when it was bought, whether it was a conservation easement or full fee, our contribution at the county level, our partner's contribution as well. If it's a preserve now, then you have a link to that, for example, Doris Sleeper. So you can click on the 86 program, the 2000 program, and the 2020 program, and all of these will adjust. So you can see what acres we protected, total investment, county partner, and then here is total conserved. So I would encourage you to check that out.
Just on the county website.
It is. So if you just Google Volusia Forever dashboard, it will come up. And then, so why, I stole this from 1,000 Friends of Florida, one of their presentations. I think it's a good slide. So why land conservation should remain a priority? I'm not gonna read it to you, but there's multiple reasons. There's a study out by the Trust for Public Land that talks about how conservation adds value to people's properties, and it is an economic driver because people and businesses want to come where there's opportunities. So it's probably about 10 years old, so I don't want to cite it here, but it's interesting. It's called green printing by the Trust for Public Land, I believe the National Association of Counties. But so that's the Volusia Forever presentation. Sorry, did I take too long?
Oh boy, I get the microphone. That was, again, don't you think, a wonderful presentation? You know more now than you did when you walked in the door. I love this stuff, and I know more than